90%. A figure that has moved beyond the realm of diplomatic speculation and straight into operational reality. According to a report just published by Axios, a senior White House advisor has confirmed there is a 90% chance the United States will launch a military strike on Iran in the coming weeks, not months, but now. To understand why this number is so terrifying, you don't need to look at social media threats. Look at what is actually moving on the map. What we are witnessing today is the largest concentration of American air and naval power in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Two carrier strike groups, the USS Abraham Lincoln and the supercarrier Gerald R. Ford, are now in position. The Ford has just crossed the Strait of Gibraltar after its mission in the Caribbean, carrying the might of a small nation with over 80 combat aircraft and escort destroyers armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles. This is not a deterrent exercise. Sources from CNN report that the military has completed all preparations to be ready to fire as early as this weekend. THAAD and Patriot missile defense batteries have been heavily deployed to protect Allied bases. Over 250 military cargo flights have landed in the region in the first half of February alone, carrying tons of ammunition and support equipment. Trump is placing a fuse on the negotiating table with a message that couldn't be clearer. Either Iran accepts a deal on American terms within the next 10 days, or the world will witness a war whose scale could fundamentally reshape the regional landscape. The diplomatic door in Geneva isn't just closing. It is being crushed by the weight of military assets closing in on Iran's borders. The diplomatic track has just hit a stone wall. On February 17th, the second round of indirect talks between the U.S. and Iran took place in Geneva under Omani mediation. Picture this. Omani Foreign Minister Badr bin Hamad al-Busaidi had to physically walk between separate rooms at the embassy to deliver proposals because the two sides refused to even sit at the same table. The U.S. delegation didn't just include familiar names like Special Envoy Steve Witkoff or Senior Advisor Jared Kushner. The presence of Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of CENTCOM, was an unmistakable message. America is negotiating with one hand on the holster. The U.S. demands were a suffocation list for Tehran. Zero uranium enrichment on Iranian soil, the total removal of their 450-kilogram stockpile of highly enriched uranium, a suspension of all nuclear activities for at least 3 to 5 years, and placing the ballistic missile program on the table. The response from Iran? Total rejection. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated bluntly that Iran came to Geneva with fair ideas, but submission before threats was not on the menu. Furthermore, Supreme Leader Khamenei personally intervened, declaring that the United States would never be able to destroy his government. Iran insists that its right to peaceful uranium enrichment is non-negotiable and that its missiles are infringible. The gap between America's zero enrichment and Iran's sovereign rights is not just a diplomatic rift, it is a war-sized abyss. Although both sides agreed on a set of guiding principles, and Iran promised to return with written proposals in 14 days, no one in Washington believes Tehran is doing anything other than stalling for time. When diplomacy fails to bridge this gap, it by default hands the decision-making power to the military assets gathering off the coast of the Gulf. Look at what is actually moving on the map right now. These are no longer just hollow threats on social media. This is the largest concentration of American air and naval power in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. The backbone of this force consists of two carrier strike groups. First, the nuclear-powered USS Abraham Lincoln has been in the Arabian Sea since late January, carrying carrier Air Wing 9, including the Black Knight Squadron with cutting-edge F-35C Lightning IIs. The Lincoln is not alone. It is escorted by a steel ring of Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and the cruiser USS Mobile Bay. Tensions have already reached a boiling point. On February 13th, an F-35 from the Lincoln shot down an Iranian Shahid drone just 500 miles off their coast. But that's only half the story. The world's largest supercarrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, has been ordered from the Caribbean to the eastern Mediterranean. The latest reports confirm the Ford has passed the Strait of Gibraltar and will soon join forces to create a pincer maneuver choking off Iran's every exit. Furthermore, the USS George H.W. Bush departed Norfolk ahead of schedule without completing routine certifications, a clear sign of an emergency deployment. On the ground, the Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan has become the eye of the storm. Satellite imagery confirms the presence of at least 30 F-35As, 36 F-15E Strike Eagles, and stealth assassins F-22 Raptors from Langley. In total, over 500 American and Allied combat aircraft are ready. Beneath the waves, an Ohio-class submarine, likely the USS Georgia, carries 154 Tomahawk missiles. It alone possesses more firepower than the entire missile inventories of many nations. Over 250 military cargo flights landed in February, establishing a vast logistical network with ammunition depots and THAAD, Patriot missile defense systems, covering the region. America isn't just flexing, it is padding every square meter around Iran for a campaign that won't be a one-off strike, but a comprehensive, weeks-long operation. Look at how Donald Trump is manipulating the hourglass of this crisis. On February 19th, at the inaugural meeting of the Peace Council in Washington, he set a timeline so specific it sent shockwaves through global markets. 10 days. Trump told reporters, "Maybe we're going to make a deal, or maybe we're not. You're going to be finding out over the next probably 10 days. This is not a random number. To understand why this 10-day deadline is so devastating, we have to look back exactly 8 months to Operation Midnight Hammer in June 2015. Back then, Trump also issued a 2-week ultimatum to Iran. But what was the reality? He ordered the B-2 stealth bombers to take flight after just 3 days, long before the official deadline expired. The 10 days he mentions today is not time for diplomacy. It is a final preparation window. It is time for the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group to move into firing position, for the F-22 squadrons to complete their deployment to Jordan, and for logistical systems to top off ammunition for a campaign far larger than last year's surgical strike. This aggression is reinforced by the most hawkish voices in the administration. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, in a February 18th briefing, bluntly stated, "There are many reasons and arguments one could make for a strike against Iran." She didn't deny military possibilities. On the contrary, she cited Midnight Hammer as a testament to the president's destructive power. Furthermore, Senator Lindsey Graham went even further, speaking from Abu Dhabi. "All these ships don't come here just because the weather is nice this time of year." According to Graham, the actual decision has already been made, and the 30-day window he previously mentioned is merely the final threshold before the historic opportunity to obliterate Iran's nuclear capability closes. Trump is using fear as the ultimate negotiating tool. Addressing troops in North Carolina, he said, "Sometimes you have to have fear. That's the only thing that really will get this situation taken care of." For Trump, the next 10 days are not about waiting for a change from Tehran, but about creating a state of peak combat readiness, where the line between a threat and a falling bomb is as thin as a hair. To understand why this military buildup is so massive, we have to look back at what happened on the night of June 21st, 2025, Operation Midnight Hammer. It was the first time since 1988 that the U.S. struck Iranian soil directly, and it was the brutal debut of the GBU-57, the 13.5-ton massive ordnance penetrator. 7B. 2 stealth bombers flew 36 hours non-stop from Missouri to perform a seemingly impossible mission: destroy the Fordo nuclear facility, buried 80 to 90 meters beneath the Zagros limestone mountains. Limestone and dolomite, they aren't just rock. They are exceptional shock absorbers for blast energy. A single bomb cannot penetrate that. The U.S. had to use a sequential drilling tactic. The first bomb blows off the surface concrete, the second enters that crater to go deeper, and so on until the 6th bomb. The result? The Pentagon assessed that Iran's nuclear program was set back by 2 years. But, and this is the but, that keeps Washington's generals awake at night, subsequent intelligence reports showed the damage was less than anticipated. Surface infrastructure was leveled, but the highly enriched uranium stockpiles at the deepest levels likely remained intact. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs had to admit in a closed session that the U.S. still lacks the capability to completely destroy targets buried that deep with just a flash strike. That is precisely why this time, it's not just Midnight Hammer 2. This time, the target isn't just Fordo but a new facility called Pickaxe Mountain, buried approximately 100 meters deep, exceeding the maximum demonstrated penetration of the current GBU. 5-7. This is why we see 2 carrier strike groups, 500 aircraft, and plans for a weeks-long campaign instead of a 25-minute strike. America no longer wants to drill a hole. They are preparing for a total strangulation campaign, severing every logistical, power, and communication artery around these mountains, until Iran's nuclear heart stops beating from a lack of oxygen. They learned that a surgical strike isn't enough. If they want to finish it, they need a total anatomical overhaul. If the bombs start falling, it won't be a singular event. Reports from the Pentagon and strategic institutes like CSIS outline a devastating 4-phase campaign. Phase 1 is the decapitation of Iran's air defense grid, S-300, and Bayvar 3-7. 3 systems will be the primary targets for HARM missiles and cyber warfare to blind the adversary. Phase 2 is the strike on nuclear infrastructure at Fordo and Pickaxe Mountain. But phases 3 and 4 are when the war truly expands, targeting IRGC headquarters, drone factories, and most critically, coastal defense systems to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. But Iran is not standing still. They possess a retaliatory arsenal that Washington must view with extreme caution. Their ballistic missile inventory has been replenished to 2,000 missiles, including the Fatah hypersonic and Khorramshahr, 4 with a 3,000-kilometer range. Every American base in the region, from Qatar and the UAE to Jordan, is in their crosshairs. And let's not forget their ace in the hole, the Strait of Hormuz. This is where 20% of global oil flows every day. Iran only needs to deploy a fraction of its 5,000 naval mines or use swarms of fast attack craft to turn this strait into a graveyard for ships. If the strait is closed, Brent crude is projected to spike to $130 a barrel, a shock that could instantly wipe out 0.8% of global GDP. While the U.S. is trying to build a steel shield with Patriot and THAAD systems, which are already under extreme stress after 500 days of continuous deployment, Iran is betting on a war of economic attrition. They understand that while America can destroy their factories, Iran can destroy the stability of the global economy. This is no longer a standard firefight. It is a high-stakes game of survival, where the price of a single miscalculation could cost the entire world a financial collapse. The world is holding its breath as we watch what I call the 10-day dance. We are no longer in the phase of vague threats. We are in a phase where military decisions are measured in hours, not months. The 90% figure cited by the White House advisor is more than a probability. It is an indictment of the total failure of traditional diplomatic channels. When Donald Trump declared at the Peace Council that the next 10 days would decide everything, he wasn't just giving Tehran a deadline. He was shaping a reality where inaction would become more politically costly than firing. Look at the movement of the chess pieces. The supercarrier USS Gerald R. is expected to arrive off the coast of Israel by this coming Monday. Heavy transport and refueling aircraft have already begun landing at Israeli airfields. This is preparation for a kinetic campaign on a scale we haven't seen in decades. Trump faces a binary choice. Either a deal he can proclaim as the greatest in history to the American public, or a full-scale strike to finish what he calls the nuclear threat. The truth is, folks, the fuse has been lit. Iran has put its entire national system on a wartime footing. The coming hours will decide not just the future of Iran's nuclear program, but whether the Middle East enters a new era of peace or is engulfed in a great war whose economic and humanitarian consequences no one can control. The price of the next 10 days could be the stability of an entire century. We will continue to monitor this hour by hour.